Hey man, why is everyone starting a podcast? I won't lie. I've thought about it. Your YouTube channel gets big enough? Start a podcast. You don't have a YouTube channel? Start a podcast. Have the worst opinions known to man? Start a podcast. Play sports? Make vodka. Start a podcast and then make vodka. Everyone from teachers to preachers to ex-frat boys have a podcast these days. How much do we really need to be consuming other people talking? Hey, before podcast, there was talk radio, and before talk radio, there was just radio. And then there were two guys who were like, we want radio broadcasts to be on my iPod. Wouldn't it be cool if they broadcast on my iPod? Podcast. Podcasts got to be increasingly popular in the 2000s. Joe Rogan, 2014. Podcasting exploding and gaining substantial popularity. This is just my opinion, but 2014 was the perfect storm. Spotify added podcasts in 2015. Apple already had podcasts since 2005, but who cares? They were getting easier to listen to. And now we have a charting podcast called ASMR Boyfriend with descriptions I can't read out loud. Mommy, help me. If you scroll on the podcast trending page on Spotify, it goes on forever. I didn't even know this many people existed. Game Theory has a podcast? But wait, when I click into an episode, they're just re-uploaded videos? What is podcast? This could be considered a podcast. It's just me talking if you're not looking at the screen. Could Colin and Samir videos technically be podcasts? Yes, they are. Videos, podcasts, videos, podcasts, videos, podcasts, videos, podcasts, videos, podcasts. Commentary and video essays as a whole could be considered podcasts. At least the ones that don't have sound effects every 3 seconds to keep your interest, because we're all spiraling into an attention deficit. Thousands and thousands of people are competing for your attention at one time. Hey, look here. Stop folding your laundry. What are you doing? It's like I'm not even here. Aren't sermons podcasts? Boring keynotes? Being muted on a Zoom call listening to your boss and coworkers talk about something you don't really care about? That's a podcast. My other video show, Deranged DMs, we literally just took the audio without sound effects and threw it on Spotify as podcasts. Which, by the way, you should go watch. We just did an episode with Olivia from H3. Okay, bye. Podcasts aren't just audio anymore, which was the main appeal of people who didn't want to get on camera but still wanted to entertain. And now what? We've got video podcasts that are uploaded on YouTube and then clipped and put on Instagram Reels, YouTube Shorts, and TikToks. And you've got to have your podcast everywhere to expand the reach of the podcast, which it undeniably does do, and it makes it more accessible to people. But then feeling the pressure to have a video podcast to reach new fans, where now you have to invest in camera equipment and a fancy set in order to feel like that's the only way to become successful, takes away part of the appeal of starting a podcast, where it's so casual that you don't even need to get ready to appear presentable on camera. Does that depend on your motive for starting a podcast? Is it a good or bad thing? I don't know what to make of this information. I'm just here to give it to you. Podcasts are widely popular because they're easily accessible on several platforms now, especially YouTube, which is free. They're easily made. The barrier to entry is just $100 on Amazon to get a Blue Yeti mic. For the love of God, please stop buying these. They are such shit mics for the price. You don't have to get the Shure 7 SMB, but please don't get the Blue Yeti mic, please. Anyway, then you just hit record, put it on a free site like Spotify for podcasters, and hooey, gosh darn it, you got yourself a podcast. And of course, the easiness of it all depends on the scope of your podcast, the topics, whether or not you need to prepare interview questions, or if you're researching something and making it kind of a video essay style, and the preparation that comes with making it a video podcast if you want to do that. Podcasts are nice to throw on in the background as you're folding your laundry, or cooking dinner, or walking the dog, or driving to work, without much commitment to something serious that you have to pay a lot of attention to. They're casual, usually, and it feels like you're hanging out with a bunch of pals, and learning or laughing along with them. And with everyone and their mother and their dog and moms and dogs and moms and daughters starting podcasts, you literally have thousands of personalities to choose from that you can actually vibe with the best. You basically have unlimited options for choosing a podcast that you like. So, I get the argument that the podcast industry is so saturated because the barrier to entry is so low, but that just means you have more options to choose from. So that's my tired optimist take. I typically listen to comedy podcasts podcasts, so that's my lens here. And ironically, this list of things is the exact reason people start podcasts in the first place. So no, I don't think people who start podcasts are a bunch of narcissists that think people want to hear them talk for an hour and a half about nonsense. I mean, maybe if you're giving out the absolute worst shitty opinions presented as factual worldly evidence.
Will they divorce, or do you want them to keep going in the relationship?
Keep going.
You can't divorce. I mean, that's not a real thing.
That, but of course it depends. And that extends to YouTubers too. I'm sure some of them are. To want to have a platform of any kind can be considered on the spectrum of narcissism. But it would be weird to call them all narcissists and bad people. I don't know. Is being front-facing in the entertainment industry inherently narcissistic? But Keanu Reeves exists, so how could that be true? Anyway, I only brought that up because I know that some people do think that. If you logged onto twitter.com, I bet you could find that opinion. I've seen it, and I personally think it's a weird opinion to have. So why do people start podcasts? Well, I asked people who had podcasts on my Instagram at it's Gabi Belle, and I'm going to paraphrase the common themes here that I found in the answers that you guys submitted. Because obviously the correct answer is that there isn't one reason, so don't come at me with anecdotal evidence. Like, shut the fuck up. It's an easy way to express myself without much editing or production. It's an excuse to chat, stay in touch, and connect with friends. Or you had a good idea with a potential audience that you're passionate about. There are a ton of good reasons why people start podcasts. So it's not that people think that they're overly self-important, and I felt important and wanted people to actually listen to me. Okay, well, you're not really helping my case here. People do it for money. Shocker. People who already have a platform might find it adjacently advantageous for them to start one. Firstly, because it would be fun, and secondly, they're able to justify it because they already have an audience and can support this podcast through ad revenue and sponsorships they get from it. Not inherently a bad thing, but some people do it just for money, which is probably unsurprising to most of you. Kind of like whenever a YouTuber was starting a book because their managers said it was a good idea, but they have zero interest whatsoever and have never shown interest in writing. Sometimes you get that vibe. I was reached out to by a company to be the host of a podcast that they were planning and pitching. Weird, right? You're starting a podcast about something and then getting someone else to host it, while you sit behind the scenes and just be the producer. Coming into the entertainment industry, this is just not something I'd ever thought of. I guess it's kind of like a team of songwriters writing a song with the intention for it to be for someone else. Feels a lot less personal, right? Well, this deal that they pitched me would pay me per episode. And it dawned on me that, yeah, some people just do this shit for money. For companies they're part of. And in cases like this, where companies just reach out to influencers to host it, so I thought I'd include it here. But aside just doing it for money, because this isn't even close to the majority of podcasters, they do it to express themselves, hang out with friends, and to share thoughts with people. Like, those are good reasons, but why? If you want to get together with a friend, do it. If you want to express yourself, you can without showing anyone else. Why do we share things? This isn't just for podcasts. This is everything that exists in media and content and entertainment, and tweets and music and videos and books and literally anything that anyone could ever create. Why? Why do we share it? What's the point? I feel like to truly understand why people start podcasts, we need to go deeper, and yes, this is a result of me starting a script thinking that it was going to be an easy little thing for me to write, and I'm looking at scientific studies and I'm going to present them in a silly little way. New York Times did a study on why people share things. I think the angle was like why people share things on social media, like to someone else, which I still find interesting, but a lot of the same concepts apply to why people share things online in general, like podcasts, or sending a silly meme to your boyfriend about which duck reminds you of him. First of all, this question is so hard to answer because it's human nature to share, which also happens to be the answer to my question of why people share. It's human nature. We have a need to want to inform others. We also want to reaffirm an image of ourselves, whether that be intelligent, funny, kind, or an insecure loser. What you share defines how people perceive you. And we do it to stay connected, which is one of the reasons you people gave for starting a podcast. We share to stay connected and maintain conversation with pals, especially those that share interests. Sharing makes people feel valuable, like podcasting. When people express themselves, it feels so good to be heard and validated and valued. It can help you feel involved in the world. I'm someone who needs like a solid factual number or reason for how some things are, and this isn't necessarily the most satisfying answer because it's all about feelings. And like maybe there's some neurological little things that could explain this better, but that's why we share. It's all in here. And that's why we have the podcast, The Fantasy Footballers. Footballers. Fantasy footballers. Fantasy football podcast. Fantasy football. I like sharing because I like making people laugh. I like to laugh. I want to make you laugh. And inform you about fantasy footballers. Fantasy football podcast. I just want you to know it exists. To not feel alone. And unless you're Barstool, because clearly they just produce podcasts for money, because why does Barstool have over 30 podcasts? This is a crime. They're really just out here giving microphones to anyone in the office who speaks. But yeah, there are entire companies dedicated to producing podcast shows for people who wouldn't have necessarily thought to start their own podcast, because they kind of pitch it as like a business thing, like, hey, you want to make some money, kid? Come here. Come here, I got an idea for you. Podcasting seems so great, so why do podcasts end? Well, usually it's time constraints, scheduling multiple people if your podcast isn't just you talking into a void, or money if you're low on time and paying an editor. It might be too expensive for you to keep up. There's many reasons people stop doing things that they like doing, or you had a catastrophic fallout with your co-host and you're praying for the pain and suffering to end. In that case, the podcast ends. So like, if usually it's all so great, why doesn't everyone start one? It's so easy, it's fun, it's a way to connect with friends, maybe make some money on the side if it gets bigger? Well, I think I can help you answer that, and I didn't even have to do research for it. It's all up here. I don't wanna. You don't wanna. I get creative fulfillment elsewhere with a hobby that's much more difficult and astronomically more expensive. Or it's too much work. It's not that much more work, but if it's more work and your plate is full, it's more work. It's too much work. Don't do it. I don't have anything to talk about for that long. I don't have friends to talk to. Podcasts are also the source of so much controversy, dude. Every time I hear a controversy now, it's something someone said on a live stream or a podcast. This is why we edit, people, to cut out the dumbass shit you say. When you look at it afterward and you're like, oof, that didn't come across the way I wanted it to. But we all know dumb shit we say makes it into the final cut anyway, especially if it's something you're new at. Or if you're XQC. I don't know. I think if I were to do a podcast, I'd probably start it solo, just to get things off my chest. But then again, I can just journal or make a video on it. Which, ironically, videos and podcasts, it's so hard to separate them now. I don't know which is which one's considered what. Videos can be podcasts. This video can be a podcast. What I'd really want to do is start a sleep podcast. Because I'm someone who has trouble sleeping every night, and I think it'd be nice to help other anxious insomniacs out there. One of my creator friends, who shall remain anonymous, was going to start a podcast with someone, had months of planning, only to realize they didn't want to start one at all, actually. So let me answer the main question for you. Not everyone needs a podcast. There was no question. I forgot I changed the title to something else. But if it's something you have fun doing and just want to for literally no reason, you don't need any reason to start a podcast. Go for it. None of my business. You thought I was gonna be a hater in this video? It's called a clickbait, fella. Subscribe.
Oh! Bye! Thank you! Oh! 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 Bye!